Okay, sorry for that slight delay, but good evening and welcome to the May 4th, 2023 meeting of the Humboldt County Planning Commission. I'm Noah Levy, and let me just say, may the 4th be with you. Had to take that chance. Before we get started, as usual, I just want to call your attention to the second page of our agenda, as well as the bottom of the screen, which shows the ways that you can publicly participate remotely, either by phone or by computer. If you are on a computer, the best way to participate is by Zoom. That will give you a real-time link to the meeting. If you are watching on the LegStar stream, just be advised that if you wish to call in, you'll need to do so a little bit earlier because that live stream runs, I don't know, half a minute or a minute behind real time. With that, I would invite you to join me in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Laura, could I ask you to take a roll call of commissioners present, please?
Commissioner Skavdal,
Here.
Commissioner Levy,
Here.
Commissioner Landry,
Here.
Commissioner Mulder,
Present.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell, Commissioner West.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 6. That's a quorum. Let's get to item C, which is agenda modifications. Director, are there any modifications to the agenda tonight?
We have no modifications this evening.
Okay. Then that brings us to item D on the agenda, which is public comment on non-agenda items. This is for any public comment having to do with the planning process or the jurisdiction of this commission, which is not pertaining to one of the items on our agenda tonight. Are there any members of the audience in the room who wish to comment on something not on the agenda? Okay. And I am not seeing any hands up on Zoom. So we will close that section of public comment. And that brings us to item E, which is the consent agenda. As usual, I will run through the consent agenda items and see if there are any members of the commission or of the public who wish to pull them from consent and have a discussion or make comment on them individually. So the first item on consent is review and approval of the April 20th, 2023 action summary. Seeing none, that will stay on consent. Second item is Humboldt Heritage Management LLC conditional use permit in the Whitethorn area. Anyone wishing to comment on or have questions about that?
Chair, I just want to be clear
Yep.
that that is for a continuance.
Thank you for, yeah, I should have noted that. That is actually just on the consent to be continued to a date uncertain. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, that will remain on consent. The third item on consent is the NorCal 420 Patient Collective conditional use permit in the Dinsmore area. That is a project that is being recommended for approval.
Chair, I'd like to pull that.
Okay, we'll pull that. The fourth item is the Peachtree LLC conditional use permit in the Dinsmore area, also a project recommended for approval. Anyone wishing to pull that for a discussion? Seeing none, we will leave that on consent. And the fifth and final item on tonight's consent calendar is the Hornstein Final Map Subdivision Extension in the Arcata area. Anyone wishing to pull that?
I just have questions.
Okay, we'll pull that for questions. All right, so that leaves us with items 1, 2, and 4 still on the consent calendar.
I want to pull the minutes.
The last meeting's minutes? Well, one of them is already off consent, but you'd like to pull the one from last meeting, the April 20th.
Yes.
Okay. Then that leaves only items 2 and 4 on the consent calendar, and I would entertain a motion.
I so move.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Mulder and a second from Commissioner Skavdal to approve the items 2 and 4 on the consent calendar.
We need to do a roll call again for attendance.
Okay.
So let me get that set up.
Sure. Can that wait till after we take the, well, no, I guess because Brian, yeah, you're right. Let's do that first then, sure.
Commissioner Skavdal,
Present.
Commissioner Levy,
Present.
Present. Present.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Present.
Commissioner West,
Present.
We need to get those fixed. Okay, thanks for that. So we have a full house now. And we have a motion from Commissioner Mulder and seconded by Commissioner Skavdal to approve items 2 and 4 on the consent agenda. Could we get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Landry,
Yes.
Commissioner Skavdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. And tonight, it looks like the items pulled from consent would be the next item. So let's get to that. The first item pulled from consent was the April 2023 action summary. Comments or questions?
Sure. So I'm going to reference my comments for both sets of minutes. In one, it looks like a lot of corrections were made and changes made, so I appreciate all that work. However, it looks like you've made a substantive change in the order in which the minutes are kept, meaning historically the agenda was used to create the minutes, and all the items were presented in agenda order unless there was a change to the agenda modification by the director. So it seems like it doesn't go in numerical order, so I would like you to go back and do it the way that it's historically been done, according to the agenda. Instead of 1, 5, 7, and then later on 2, 3, 6. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. When an item is pulled from consent, it needs to be put into the items pulled from consent section, so that is why I usually move those down. But you're saying you want them left?
That's not what you're saying, is it? Because if it was pulled off of the consent agenda, then the record of the consent agenda that was approved should only have those items that were left on the consent agenda, right? The other ones were pulled for a later part of the meeting.
Well, I'm talking about consistency, and for each item that was approved by a consent vote, that same wording of who made the motion and who seconded it was placed on each item approved by consent. For the items that were pulled, they have a different discussion, they have a different motion maker, and if we want to make that change, that's something we can do, but
If I
it's-
could, Commissioner Mitchell, I'm sorry, I made that change because the consent calendar has one motion, 1 second, 1 vote. And so rather than have that repeated 2 to 5, 6, 7 times, since there was only one motion, I modified it to be a motion on the consent agenda.
Okay, as long as it was intentional and not just a result of a different person
Yeah,
doing it.
no, it was very intentional because we didn't make separate motions on every single one of those. We made, or not we, you made a motion on the consent calendar, and there was a second and then a vote. And I thought that that was a more accurate representation of what actually happened at the meeting.
Commissioner Mulder?
Director kind of said what I was like, that's the way I thought it was, like one motion.
Yeah.
And so, I agree.
Yeah, it makes sense. I have no objections to it. I just want to make sure we're doing it on purpose and that it will be consistent from here on out.
Thank you.
Chair, I make a motion to approve the action summary from Thursday, April 6, 2023.
Well, they're
They're
it's already
separate
listed
items.
separately. It's already on the agenda later. We haven't even gotten to the other one. So we have a motion to approve the April 20 action summary. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Mulder and a second by Commissioner Mitchell. And could we get a vote on that, please, Laura?
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Landry,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Oh, I forgot to open that one up for public comment. Forgive me, I should have done that, even though it's just the action summary. Okay, that does bring us to the third item.
Chair, if you could, would you just do that?
Sure,
even though you've
okay.
already voted?
I apologize. It's better late than never. If there was anyone in the room or on Zoom wishing to comment on the April 20 action summary, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will close that item. Okay. That brings us to the second item pulled from consent, which is the NorCal 420 Patient Collective. And I would invite a staff report, please.
Chair, if I may.
Okay, you're not a staff report.
I just have a simple question on
Fair enough.
the report that was provided to us. If I could ask that, and then
Let me
we may
just-
decide to waive the staff report.
Shh, that's fair. Sure,
Okay.
go ahead. I think we can do that.
So my question is, in attachment 6, public comment, there was a comment from SBI about limiting the water use to domestic use off the SBI property, which it appears staff agreed to do by condition, but I can't find that condition in the conditions of approval. So if you could either point that out for me, or if we could add that condition.
Through the chair, I'm not seeing it in the conditions of approval, so I think that would be appropriate to add that as a condition. I will say that I think the intention was not to approve the use of that diversion on the adjacent property for cannabis, and so it's not in the project description, but I do think it would be appropriate to add that as a condition.
Particularly since that was expressed that we would do that. So thank you, Commissioner Scavdall. How do people feel? I will take public comment at the very least, but would people like a staff report, or shall we waive the staff report? Commissioner Mulder?
Just to be transparent, I don't know if the applicant's present or not, but just give them their opportunity before.
I will, yeah. I usually do the staff report first, and then we get public comment, including from applicant. But how are people feeling? Staff report? Yeah, no? Don't need it? Okay. That seems fine to me. Let's just see if there is any public comment. And first of all, I would invite the applicant, if you are in attendance, either in person or remotely, to raise your hand. I see the hand raised on Zoom. Thank you very much. So go ahead, NorCal 420 applicant. You are free to make a presentation of longer than 3 minutes if you wish, or to tell us anything you want to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levy. This is Nathan Whittington. I'm the consultant for John Moreno, and he's sitting here with me in my office. Portia and I worked hard with addressing any concerns around this. We did speak with the agencies about the neighboring parcel and ensuring that we will not be using any water for this project from there, and that's a perfect condition. I do want to point out that this project has a long history of pre-compliance issues on this property, neighboring properties. It was a severe blight situation. Mr. Moreno has worked hard to clean up his community, the properties surrounding his, and worked diligently through this long, arduous process to ensure that he can move forward compliantly. And I believe working with the county planning department, we've come up with a pretty good program here. And we look forward to approval, and we're available for any questions or follow-ups as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just see if there's any other public comment, and then I'll see if anybody up here has questions for you. Thanks, Mr. Whittington. Anyone else wishing to comment on this project on Zoom? Okay, not seeing any hands. I will close the public comment, but reserve the right to call the agent up. Oh, okay, I just saw a hand come up. That's fine. There's a little bit of a delay sometimes from when I say it. Yes, go ahead, 923-7108.
Hi. Are we on item number 3?
This is item 3 on the consent calendar, NorCal 420 Patient Collective.
Okay. Yeah, just one item 2. On the agenda, the Zoom number is not on there. So it took a while to figure out how to get it. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Wow. Sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. My questions about this was I didn't see any verification for what was existing. And I was wondering if I missed it, and is the verification method, because I saw in some other ones, is counting the plants and then assessing 36 square feet per plant and using that as the square footage that was existing, and only looking at square footage as opposed to the type of growth it was. Okay, and then just one little concern about fans. I've heard people report the noise from these big industrial fans, so I'm not sure what the noise level of those and if that's considered in here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to see if there's anyone else on Zoom or in the room wishing to comment on this before I close public comment. Not seeing any hands. I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Mulder.
So on my agenda, I'm seeing the very page 1. It says call in via telephone at 346-248-7799. Is that the correct Zoom phone number? So it's in a different place, I'm
Yes.
noticing,
It's-
than typical, but it is
it's-
right on page 1. So I just wanted to bring, I appreciate the concerns that were brought up by the commenter, so I wanted to make sure that I see it here on page 1.
Thank you. That does, you're absolutely right. I think it does usually appear on page 2 under the public comment instructions, but it is here on page 1, which is certainly just as easy to find if people know to look for it there. So, okay, thanks. The project's agent was available for any questions. Did anyone have any questions for the agent about this project? Okay, or any other questions for staff?
I think, Chair, we would like to respond to the questions. It has
Yeah.
not been our practice to include the calves unless there's a question on the cultivation area verification. Sorry to speak in acronyms. But we did obviously do a calf. Do you have that up? Can you speak to it?
Yes, through the chair. So our CAV, I'm looking at this right now, and actually, if the commission would like, I could share screen. It's a little messy because we weren't prepared to do this right now, but it's based off of a, looks like a November 2015 image where we did find,
I'm happy to have you share screen if you have something that you can easily pull up.
yes, yeah. Give me 1 second.
And while you do, just a follow-up for Director Ford. So is it the case that the CAV documentation would be included with the staff report packet if and only if there's been a sort of an issue raised by a comment or something like that pertaining to that?
That's typically what our practice has been, but given the fact that this seems to be getting brought up more and more, I think that we'll make it a practice to include these as an attachment to the staff report.
Thanks. Since it was brought up, not just about an individual project, but more as a general concern, then, and since you have the documentation, if it wouldn't be a great deal of additional trouble, that seems worthwhile to me. Thanks.
Laura, are you seeing my screen? Can that be shared with everybody? Yeah. So this is a 2015 image that we captured that the CAV was primarily based on. And you're seeing there's the two areas, primarily Area A up top. Sorry. And if I can scroll down here, we have Area B. And then I'm going to kind of scroll back up to the cultivation form that we actually used and try to reorient ourselves here. And so what we had found was, looks like just over 32,000 square feet of cultivation based off this 2015 Terra Server image. And I apologize that it's not the easiest thing to see here. We weren't prepared to share this, but.
Yes, Commissioner Mulder.
Thank you for sharing that. I don't share concerns about the CAV. I don't think that I am qualified to measure out square footages. So the documentation I see presented in this packet and on the screen here is very similar to any other documentation I feel that we've had before us that on a project we've approved. So I'd be willing to make a motion to pass resolution 23-602, which says the following: finds the planning commission has considered the mitigated negative declaration for the commercial medical marijuana land use ordinance and the addendum that was prepared for the NorCal 420 Patient Collective, Inc., and find that the proposed project complies with the general plan and zoning ordinance and approves the conditional use permit subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Could we please add the condition regarding?
That was part of my motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
including the addition of the condition pertaining to that no irrigation water shall be drawn from the Sierra Pacific neighboring parcel.
No non-domestic irrigation.
No non-domestic yes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Mulder and a second from Commissioner Scavdall. Is there any additional discussion on this motion? Seeing none, then Laura, I would invite a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Landry,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. The NorCal 420 Patient Collective, Inc. project is approved with the recommended conditions.
I just want to say good catch on that one.
And that brings us to, oh yes, and then the third item pulled from consent is item E5, the Hornstein Final Map Subdivision Extension. Commissioner Mitchell, you said you had just a question about this.
Yeah, a couple questions. Since we do have multiple new members, I was wondering if you could go over the conditions under which it would be appropriate for us to add additional conditions or revisit the matter. For the most part, when I see these, I just think this is perfunctory or just granting them extra time. But I do know that some of these that have been extended multiple times, the circumstances under which they were approved may have changed. For example, the housing crisis that we've been having is getting worse and worse. I don't think it's appropriate for this particular situation, but could you talk to us about when it would be appropriate for us to, for example, ask for more density or make changes to reflect the changing underlying fact pattern?
Certainly. So really, a change in circumstances has to do with something that maybe we know now that we couldn't have known at the time, and that would change our understanding of it. One of the ones that I'll give you an example that may come back to the commission in the future is that there was a subdivision approved in the McKinleyville Community Plan. And the wetland delineation for that looked at 3 parameters and did not review 1 parameter wetlands. The McKinleyville Community Plan defines wetlands as being 1 parameter. And so if that were to come back for an extension, that would be something that the commission may want to revisit because it's not consistent with the community plan, even though when the commission approved it in 2011, it was determined to be consistent with the McKinleyville Community Plan. Another one may be that perhaps ordinances or requirements have changed. And that would be a situation where if it's not a vesting tentative map, or even if it is, I guess you could revisit it, that you would want to evaluate it under the conditions of the new regulatory environment that exists now. I would be a little bit careful about saying that because of a housing crisis, we want to increase density, because fundamentally, if none of the regulatory requirements have changed such that we're trying to increase density on this parcel, that it was found to be consistent with the general plan, that includes the density at the time. And so the housing crisis in and of itself would really militate for approving as many projects as possible, hoping to get housing built. just approving housing subdivisions doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get built. I just want to be clear on that. So there's a fine balance between the regulatory environment, whether it's changed or not, whether maybe environmental factors have changed, maybe it's determined that there is now a listed species on the site. Those would clearly be reasons to revisit it. But just, maybe our thinking now that we want more housing and so we want to increase the density, if that's not a direction that comes from the general plan, that would be dangerous territory.
I have a question in regards to that question. Can you force someone to subdivide their property more than they might want to?
If there is a minimum density and they're not meeting that minimum density, yes, you could.
Okay.
I don't think we have that, though.
Commissioner Mulder.
So I would like to just make sure that we kind of tread lightly in this topic. I know that it's, from my perspective of what I'm seeing, it's very challenging for people to develop in Humboldt County and bring those developments to fruition. So I think it would be very scary to say, hey, no big deal. We've been approving map extensions since I've been on the commission multiple times. I think it'd be really slippery slope to start saying we're going to start adding conditions on there, because I think it would deter people from bringing other land developments or subdivisions forward. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would really want to be cautious of that and make sure it's sound policy why we'd be going there, where it sounded like if the general plan supported it, then maybe that would be sound policy. That's it.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I also wanted to ask a question on the Public Works conditions of approval for this project. It talks about there needing to be a turnaround, but it doesn't explicitly state that it's a fire truck turnaround. Is that implied, or is that possibly, it looks like modifications were made on conditions the last time it was extended, so I want to make sure that
That would normally be what they're looking for, is to address the fire departments or districts' ability to pull in and then pull into a turnaround, usually a T or something else, to be able to pull in, back up, and turn around, not have to back all the way out of a dead-end road. So yes,
So,
it is implied if it's not explicitly stated.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the staff? Yes, Commissioner Scabdell.
On these extensions, are the adjoining parcels renoticed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If there's no other commissioner questions at this time, I do want to still open this up for public comment. If the applicant is present on Zoom or in the room and would wish to make any comment, I would invite you to come first. Yes, go ahead, sir. Oh, I'm so sorry. My bad. Yes,
Are we
go
live?
ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hello. The question for the fire turnaround, there is a fire turnaround right up on the top of Splitter Lane. It's been there since, I believe, 98. So we've take pretty seriously the, I forgot it's called the SLR or SLA fire turnaround standards from Department of CAL FIRE now, Department of Forestry.
Right.
So we do have wide roads and fire turnarounds in appropriate places. Besides that, I'll answer any questions that anybody would like to ask.
Thank you for being available, sir. Any other questions for the applicant? I think not. Thank you so much. Anyone else on Zoom wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public comment portion of this item. Commissioner Mitchell and then Commissioner Mulder. Okay.
I was just prepared to make a motion, but if there's further discussion. Okay, well then, I would move that we adopt the resolution, which is the following. It finds that the Planning Commission has considered and adopted the neg deck on January 25th, 2015 for the Hornstein subdivision, and as no new changes to the project are proposed, no further environmental review is required, and finds that the proposed project complies with the Jacoby Creek Community Plan and General Plan and Zoning Ordinance, and approves the final map subdivision extension subject to the original conditions of approval and Public Works Department conditions of approval and tentative map and site plan.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mitchell, seconded by Commissioner O'Neill. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, then.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Landry,
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously, and the Hornstein final map subdivision extension is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, and that brings us now to old business. We have two items under that section, and the first is the April 6th action summary. That's not on consent. Does that mean that staff wishes to make a presentation about it?
I think it was put on old business because it was continued last time for corrections. We believe we made the corrections and brought it
Yeah.
back.
Okay. Did any commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Thank you so much for your corrections, Laura. I do just want to open the matter for public comment. Is there anyone, before we get to Nature's Jar, which is on the screen right now, we're still on the April 6th, 2023 action summary. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to comment? I can't actually see my Zoom participants right now, so.
Can you stop that?
Thank you. I didn't think there would be. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay, so no public comments. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the action summary for Thursday, April 6, 2023.
We have a motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Landry. Any further discussion before we vote? Nope. Then Laura, I would invite a vote, please.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Landry,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. I will just state for the record, it's a shame to have to see commissioners sharing a microphone. And I know the reason why is because we're missing not one, but two of the little foam heads. So if you could get some, that'd be great. I guess the board has 5 and that's all they need, but we're 7. So thank you so much. Okay. Well, that's nice of you, Cliff. Could conceivably borrow one for tonight. All right, that brings us to the second and last item under G, old business, and that is Nature's Jar, Inc. special permits in the Wiat area. And I would invite staff to make a presentation.
Surprise! Let's go into gray bed.
Sounds like there's a mic back there.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Megan Acevedo, and I am the assigned planner for Nature's Jar, Inc. The project is, Nature's Jar is requesting a special permit for a project that's located in the Wiyot area. Here's an image on the left of the project location and its proximity to Wiyot. The project site is located slightly north from Wiyot. The project is accessed from Sunny Lane, off of Sewell Drive, off of Newton Road, which are private roads accessed by State Highway 101. Road evaluation reports were submitted for the private roads, designating them as being developed to the equivalent of a road Category 4 standard. The project was referred to Caltrans and no comments were received. This site will be operated with the use of up to 2 employees, and up to 6 vehicle trips are anticipated per day. As the operations are pre-existing, no increase in traffic is anticipated. The applicant is requesting a special permit to approve 7,914 square feet of outdoor cannabis cultivation with 790 square feet of ancillary propagation. Water source will come from a well, a stream diversion, and rain catchment. The applicant has obtained a well assessment report for the well, prepared by licensed geologist David Lindberg. The well assessment determined that the well draws water from a confined subsurface aquifer, not connected to surface waters or unconfined near-surface aquifers, and estimates that the aquifer has a recharge rate of approximately 3.8 million gallons per year. Annual water usage for the project is approximately 72,750 gallons, which is 8.4 gallons per square foot per year. The applicant has 19,700 gallons of existing water storage on site, 7,000 gallons of which is in rain catchment tanks. The applicant is proposing to add 50,000 gallons of additional rain catchment tanks, which will increase rain catchment water storage to 69,700 gallons. Once the additional water tanks are installed, rain catchment will be the primary water source for the project. Power is currently sourced from an existing less than 50 horsepower generator, and the applicant will transition to 100% solar power by 2026. The site will be run by the applicant and up to 2 employees. Drying will occur on-site and trimming will occur off-site at a licensed processing facility. The applicant is requesting a special permit to approve a setback reduction to public lands, the Humboldt Redwood State Park. The nearest cultivation area to the Humboldt Redwood State Park is approximately 135 feet to the shared parcel line. The project was referred to the California State Parks on April 2nd, 2021, and no comments have been received by the agency. As the project is only requesting a special permit and could have gone to the zoning administrator for decision, it was determined that the project should be brought forward to the Planning Commission due to a major concern. The major concern regarding the project is the post-2016 timber conversion that occurred through an approved less than 3-acre conversion permit. Part of the project's approval is the argument of environmental superiority justification for relocating pre-existing guerrilla grows that were located within streamside management areas on site, scattered about the property and within the pre-existing residents located within the streamside management area. The applicable section of the Commercial Medical Marijuana Land Use Ordinance regarding timberland conversions states that if the parcel is zoned FR, U, or TPZ, or involves the conversion of timberland as defined under Section 4526 of the Public Resources Code, a copy of a less than 3-acre conversion permit approved by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection shall be submitted, which is on file. The mitigated negative declaration prepared for the CMMLUO made the finding that the ordinance is not likely to result in the loss of forest land or in the conversion of forest land to non-forest use due to the permitting process. Thus, the impact on this area is less than significant. The applicant is required to show the restoration of the historic cultivation areas as part of this project's approval. You can see in the images, the one on the left is from 2015, October, I believe, of 2015. And the image on the right is from 2018, when the conversion was completed. And so this just kind of shows you the pre-2016 conditions of the site and post-2016 conditions. Here are some of the images that were provided by the applicant to show evidence of pre-existing guerrilla grow. And this was used in our cultivation area verification to determine the amount of pre-existing cultivation on the site. And the applicant was given an interim permit for 8,064 square feet. And this concludes my presentation, and I am here for any questions.
Pardon me. Thank you very much. Commissioner Mitchell has a question.
Is there enough room on the site to provide the required setback from public lands, or what is the rationale for needing to be, so close to the public lands?
So the less than 3 acre conversion permit was submitted originally for a home site and for the road. And I don't know why they chose that location, but it is shown on the map that is included in the less than 3 acre conversion. And just getting the cultivation out of the streamside management area and into kind of a central location is a part of our assessment for environmental superiority.
Can you go back and show us the map and just sort of describe how far other parts of the parcel are away from the public lands?
So you should be seeing this up on the screen now. That's showing the cultivation area, the conversion area as well, which is 134 roughly feet away from public lands. I think if you were to go 600 feet, you would be back beyond that cultivation area, beyond the conversion area, which I suppose would require an additional loss of timberland.
I also believe that the parcel is surrounded by the state park. So with the 600-foot setback, I don't think there really is anywhere on the parcel that you could be outside of that 600-foot setback. If you want to go to the GIS to confirm that.
Your hand up.
You got it.
Commissioner Scavdell, yes.
Sorry. My understanding from the staff report, there weren't any, even though it is state park land, there weren't any trails or roads or anything right adjacent to that property boundary that would typically be accessed by the public.
That is correct.
Okay. What's the square box, and is that another just private land holding in the middle of this parcel?
It's a separate legal parcel that is not associated to this project.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Did you have a?
I'm still formulating my thoughts.
Well, I'll just ask a question following up on this. I see, state parks received a referral. They didn't respond. I think my recollection is that they rarely do. I guess I just was wondering if, from your experience or recollection, are there occasionally cases where, with state parks in particular, where a setback reduction is sought and they do comment and sort of point out that they have particular concerns?
So I personally have not had any projects, other projects that are adjacent to the state parks. Mine are always US parks.
Yeah, so we do get comments from state parks sometimes, and I believe there was one about a year ago down in the Holmes Flat area that they did have some concern, and actually the project ended up changing the location of the mixed light and the outdoor to try to address those concerns. But state parks doesn't typically have too much concern. We do more frequently get comments from some of the other, the federal agencies.
Right. Okay, well, thanks. That was clarifying. Commissioner Mulder.
Through the chair to the director, when I'm sitting at should I disclose public, knowledge, or not public knowledge, but personal knowledge I know from a project that's involved state park that I may be dealing with? Or is that something I should, I don't know, you guys are thinking about it and I have all these thoughts in my head and I don't know what to say or not say, or if, I don't know.
So I think that through the chair, if it's something that's going to affect how you vote, then it is something you should disclose.
So this full disclosure, I don't feel it's going to affect how I vote, but I do have knowledge of a project I am trying to bring through that's had multiple comments from the state park about setbacks. So I don't see any resources that would concern me to even consider the setback issue, but I just want to have full transparent disclosure.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner O'Neill and then Commissioner Mitchell.
I don't know if I heard you right. I was trying to follow, but did you say that there was a clearing for a home? And was that home not built?
That is correct, that the clearing was for a home site that a previous applicant had submitted to CAL FIRE. And CAL FIRE was also referred with this project, and they had no comments or concerns regarding the timber clearing.
So the clearing on there that's less than 600 feet was initially for a home.
Correct.
And then rather than build a home there, the new owner decided to use it for cannabis cultivation.
Correct, and that is because through the permitting process, county staff let the applicant know that where the cultivation was existing was not permittable within a streamside management area.
So if they had pushed it back maybe to the middle of the property, it wouldn't have been approved?
You're talking about the clearing?
Well, I think the clearing was for a house, not for cannabis. So when that went through and got approved, it was for a homestead. But when they came in, rather than replant that, because they weren't going to put a homestead there, they could have picked a separate location that might have been farther back from the state properties, but they chose to just go with what was already done, right?
Correct.
Through the chair, if I could just add a little clarification. I mean, the conversion exemption that was approved is for, was noted to be for home site, as you noted. The properties are really usually allowed to have a single conversion exemption from CAL FIRE. And so if they had chosen to do something additional and remove additional timber somewhere else on the property, that would have to go through the conversion process. And one of the difficulties that we've run into over the years is that CAL FIRE typically does not approve conversions for cannabis. And so that's why you don't see very many of these sort of things. This was an approved conversion.
So it could be somewhat deceptive if you go and say, oh, I'm going to build a house and then do it, and then come in, oh, I'm not building a house. I'm really just wanting to do it for cannabis, which I know wouldn't have been approved. But it's a different owner at the time that it was done?
Correct, it was a different owner, and it does, you're right, it does raise some questions, and that's the primary reason why this was brought to the Planning Commission.
Yeah. Commissioner
Just
Mitchell.
to clarify what you just said, did you say they aren't allowed to approve them for cannabis cultivation? They rarely approve them, or is it against their rules to approve a conversion for cannabis cultivation?
So they will issue a 3-acre conversion and I'm not aware that they have a specific prohibition against cannabis. Maybe Mr. Johnson can clarify that. But the position that we've taken is that based upon the environmental work that was done for 1.0, which identified that the analysis did not include conversion of timberland, that if conversion of timberland were involved in a cannabis application, it would require revisiting the environmental document. And so therefore it's not allowed.
Commissioner Mulder.
So just a couple of things I heard a couple of questions by fellow commissioners about the 3-acre conversion. And from my understanding with the Forestry Practices Act, if they were doing a 3-acre conversion, they still have to, from my understanding is they still have to meet setback requirements from the SMAs, just like the cannabis does. Is that correct or incorrect?
Correct.
Okay, and then, just to piggyback on that, is I do believe unless the Forestry Practice Act has been changed, you can still, TPZ land, you can get a 3-acre exemption and fill it full of grapes, and it's totally legal. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
As far as CAL FIRE's rules, yeah.
As far as the county and CAL FIRE, I believe.
Commissioner Scabdell.
I'm personally starting to go through a 3-acre conversion process myself, so I can tell you that you're allowed one per part, and it's not per parcel, it's per ownership, per lifetime on the parcel. So if they got a 3-acre conversion on this, which they did, it's the only one they'll get. It's not specifically limited to home building or agriculture or whatever. It's a 3-acre conversion. The applicant can still build a home there. There's still room for a house even with this cannabis project there. So I just don't think they're interrelated that way. I think the question here is, as John put it, is are we following the protocols for the environmental documentation by doing this? And
So this has been good questions and discussion, but before we complete that or continue that, I do want to just give the opportunity for public comment on this item. Is there, by any chance, anyone in the room wishing to comment? Okay. Yes, if you'd like to comment, you should please approach the podium. Thank you. And I would just ask you to clarify if you are the applicant or the applicant's agent.
I am the applicant, and just for clarification, this 3-acre conversion was done and approved before I purchased the property. Then in purchasing the property and talking with the planning department, it was sort of understood that this would be okay because we were moving cannabis cultivation from a streamside area, management area, into a more environmentally protected area. And it's just so to be clear on all the comments and questions, that's the situation that we sort of walked into. And now we're picking up the pieces of that conversion and been cleaning it up ever since, and plan to follow through on the conditions of our permit if it were approved.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you wish to add? And if not, I'll just see if any of the commissioners have any follow-up questions. No? Yes?
Yeah, I just want to, and maybe I just need to say it in my own words, but basically what I'm hearing is that staff and the applicant believe that the least environmental impact would be to move the cannabis production to the area that's been already through the timber conversion.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will you in the future build a home there, or is that your intention or not?
We've talked about it, yeah. Currently, we live in the home that is below the site, and that's the dream, yeah, build a home up there.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your coming up and offering that. If there's no other questions,
Thank you.
you can sit down. I do, before I close public comment, want to see if there is anybody on Zoom who might wish to comment on the Nature's Jar Inc. special permit. Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for further discussion. I guess I have a question for staff. Because this may not be unprecedented, but it is a bit of an unusual circumstance. I certainly understand the logic of saying that there was this legal clearing through a CAL FIRE conversion process that already occurred. There was evidence of pre-existing cultivation that entitled them to cultivate on this property, and the least environmentally harmful place to put it would be in that conversion which had been done through that process. But given the major issue that you raise about how that could appear to put us a little bit in conflict with the master environmental analysis of the ordinance, is there anything more that needs to be done to sort of cure that conflict, or is it just enough to disclose it, say that it could raise the appearance of conversion happening to support cannabis agriculture, but in this situation, it's justified by other environmental reasoning? Is that enough, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I think you captured our position pretty clearly. The conversion happened, it was permitted, and whether cannabis were to occur on the site or not, it's going to remain converted, right? And so, in our view, this the approval of this cannabis permit would not result in a loss of timberland that otherwise would have been lost, or wouldn't have been lost.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I didn't notice any photos with the road evaluation report. Do you have any photos of the road to help support that self-evaluation?
Through the chair, we do not have any photos.
Commissioner Mulder.
Couple of things. I'm just gonna, first off, I can think of a handful of projects that have a similar situation as this one. It was a hobby of mine following the commission, so I can tell you I can think of a handful. I see this as a project that somebody picked up, and it's less than 10,000 square feet. They continued to work in good faith with the county and bring forward a project that is environmentally superior to the old Gorilla Grow in the SMA. The forest land was converted legally, and it will never be forest land again, so I'm okay with that. Also knowing that there's a handful others out there. I actually want to say I commend the applicant for still coming forward with the less than 10,000 square foot permit and still being here today to try to continue going forward. So I don't have any more hesitations, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. Any other commissioners wishing to comment?
I would just say that if the state had stepped forward and submitted a letter that they were against it, I probably would vote against it, because I think that it's kind of, iffy when, you could get together with the property owner and say, hey, do a conversion, because, we have no evidence of that. But had the state opposed it, I would oppose it, because it seems like every time there's a setback, someone wants to reduce it. And if you have a large enough parcel, you should try to stay within those guidelines. But the state did not oppose it, so I'm not going to oppose it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Or if not, are we ready to move it forward?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 23-603, Attachment 1, which does the following: finds the Planning Commission has considered the mitigated negative declaration for the commercial medical marijuana land use ordinance and addendum that is prepared for the Nature's Jar LLC project, and find that the proposed project complies with the general plan and zoning ordinance and approves the special permit subject to the recommended conditions of approval, Attachment 1A.
Thank you. We have a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Mulder, seconded by Commissioner Landry. Any further discussion on this motion? Okay, then, Laura, I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Landry,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
No.
Okay, the motion passes 6-1, so the Nature's Jar special permit is approved with the recommended conditions. Commissioner Mulder?
I just want to thank the county and the applicant for bringing it. It's good to see projects like this that are, picked up and some history behind them, and to bring it forward. So it's nice to see.
Okay. Well, thank you. And now that brings us, that's the last public hearing. We do, however, have this item H, Planning Commission Procedures. Is that a staff presentation or?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yes, it is, sorry.
thank you. We would welcome it. And we have time.
Let me pull that up. So I just basically wanted to walk through these rather rapidly, since many of you have been through this before, but thought that given the fact that there are 3 new commissioners, just to kind of orient to the fact that we do have these procedures. And so I'll just kind of walk through them. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please stop me. I'd be happy to talk about it.
Right off the bat, I see ethics is misspelled the second time. Code of conduct and ethics. Just thought I'd call that out right now.
Thank you.
I never noticed
So
that.
these are basically to help the planning commission conduct good, fair public hearings that are transparent to the public, and make sure that there is consistency. So this is obviously something done by the Board of Supervisors, and they apply to the Planning Commission. So just identifies that all of the public hearings are recorded by video or other technology. The public has a right to participate in the meetings. The standard for conducting a public hearing is to have civil discourse. And disorderly conduct is something that is absolutely discouraged. And fortunately, we really don't have too much of that. Important to recognize that all questions, everything needs to go through the chair. And sometimes it's easy to get excited, even for staff. to want to step in and speak to things and forget that the chair runs the meeting, and in order to maintain a orderly meeting, we really need to give the chair that authority. And just, normal comments about repetitious, I'm not sure I can pronounce dilatory or profane comments are some things that we are discouraged. Do want to see written comments provided, and one of the practices that's not in here is that we put on the legal notices that if people want to include their written comments to the Planning Commission as part of the agenda, we need to have it, I think, the Thursday before we send out the staff report, the staff packet. If they want us to forward written comments, we need to receive them by noon on Wednesday before the meeting, so that we can email them out basically the day before. If it's after that, they really need to present them personally to the commission. And that came at, for the newer commissioners, that came at the request of the Planning Commission, because oftentimes we were trying to email things out at 5 o'clock on Thursday for a 6 o'clock meeting, and that's just not fair. I mean, it's hit and miss whether or not you receive it or not, and so we just set some standards for that.
Yes.
On the previous, where you said the chair runs it, and we're not supposed to be disorderly, but if it's the chair that's disorderly, then it was previously said that it's our obligation, not in a disorderly way necessarily, but to speak up against that?
Yes, it is, and I believe that's in here, and we'll get to that in a moment. Participants may be represented by a counsel or an authorized agent. Defines what exhibits are. Those are normally things that are part of the record. It's important to recognize that when the Planning Commission is taking action on something, the record of your action is the resolution. Then what's being approved is the site plan and any other documents that were prepared and submitted by the applicant to that, and then the conditions of approval. What conditions typically do is modify what the applicant has submitted. So then that becomes the record, and we're trying to become more consistent about that so that there's one approval package, everybody knows what it is, where it is, what it looks like. That's not in here, but I just thought for your information it'd be helpful to kind of take seriously that when you're adopting findings, you're actually saying these things. We write the findings for you, but that's basically what you're saying you think about the project. And so I do encourage you to read the resolutions. I'm probably creating more work for ourselves, but it's important that you understand the action that you're taking. So the county council is the legal counsel. Conflicts of interest, commission members shall abide by the Political Reform Act, all fair political practice commission rules and regulations, and all other applicable laws regarding conflicts. So that's really important. When you disqualify yourself because of a conflict, it's important that you publicly state the nature of the conflict of interest in sufficient detail so the public understands that you recuse yourself and remove yourself from the room. Order of business, the chair opens the meeting. There's a roll call, public comments not on the agenda. This basically is the agenda that we use, so I won't belabor that. Yes,
Director, can I make a comment?
Yep.
I don't know if you're inviting any edits to this document as it stands. I know back when we reviewed it, there were a few edits.
Yeah, we haven't quite got those edits done. I apologize for that.
No worries, all the better, because it just means if there's any other little things like that typo on the first page, you can fix them now. But what it just struck me under order of business is that we have, maybe just in the last few months since this was done, we've routinely been adding Planning Commission discussion items as an item right after report of Planning Director, and I think that's a good opportunity to have in there, so I just thought it would be good to get this added if you could.
Thank you. So then the procedure for conducting public hearings. And there is a should there, so there can be, as was tonight, some discussion about how to approach things. It's not ironclad. The chair announces the item. There's declarations by commissioners of any conflicts, ex parte contacts, or site visits. There's the staff report. We'll identify whether or not there's any new communications that have been received. The applicant may then present other members of the public, and then the applicant is able to rebut. I think, and then notes on testimony, people need to come to the podium. They're encouraged but not required to state their name. All remarks to the chair. And then the chair is responsible for discouraging demonstrations such as applauding or booing or cheering when people make comments. The chair is responsible to maintain order in the room. And the chair may authorize additional time for testimony at any time. The public portion of the hearing is then closed by the chair. No further testimony is taken, except for questions from the commission to staff or public. Once a public hearing is closed, it can only be reopened by a motion of the commission. The commission will then proceed with discussion, including clarification or explanation by staff of points raised by members of the commission. So then the commission may require continuance of the hearing at any time during the proceedings. Prior to final action to continue, the chair will determine if those present prefer to present their testimony during the hearing or delay the date of continuance. Continuance may include a field trip. And then final decision will include findings required by statute or ordinance, and that's what's captured in the resolution. Then it talks about rules for a motion. And the commission conducts its actions by taking action on motions by members of the commission. So we see how that works every time. I think one of the things that's a little bit confusing here is once a motion is made, there's all kinds of parliamentary things that can be done. One is an amending motion. So if there's a motion and a second, a member of the commission can ask to change the motion, to amend the motion, and then if they're not willing to change the motion, somebody else can make a motion to amend the motion, and that requires a second before that's even considered.
Is there, I didn't hear any reference to time limits on presentations from, the public when they make comments. Is that just up to the chairperson to decide?
Somewhere.
It's typically up to the chair. Usually it's 3 minutes, but that can be reduced.
Okay.
Good question, Commissioner O'Neill. I think there's somewhere in here where it said, like, the applicant or their agent can be given.
It is F. Any other member of the public may speak. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes.
But right above that, yeah, the applicant's presentation is limited to 15 minutes. Okay, so it does, E and F speaks to that, yeah, thank you.
But at the chair's discretion, they can extend it? Any speakers?
They can extend or reduce.
Okay. As long as they're fair.
And orderly.
Orderly.
So if there's an amending motion, the first vote will be on the amendment. And then if the amendment passes, it becomes part of the motion. And then the vote is on the overall motion. If the amendment does not pass, then the vote is still on the overall motion without the amendment. The commission can move to refer it back to staff, or it refers to a committee here. We haven't had committees for some time. Can be postponed. It can be laid on the table, which is always interesting to me, because the only way to pick something up is to make a motion to take it off the table. And I'm not sure under what circumstances you do that, but then there's the previous question. This motion is used to end a debate that has become lengthy or repetitious. When somebody has, I guess, heard enough or has heard the same thing 3 or 4 times, they can call for the motion. And this was one that does require a change. It's a reconsideration. If in the same meeting, the Planning Commission realizes it's like, oh, we blew that. We shouldn't have taken that action. You can make a motion with a second and an action to reconsider it. And then what happens is that then that action, that application, excuse me, is then re-noticed and reconsidered at a later hearing. But you can't like go back tonight and say, you know, I don't like what we did on April 4th. And you can't do that.
And just to flag the fact that that was an edit that we made
Correct.
to what is shown here, because here it does say, or the next regular meeting. But that will be changed. It must be within the meeting that we can reconsider, the same meeting.
Yep. So then there's a point of order. A member of the commission who feels the rules are not being followed may call attention to the breach by raising their hand. I don't think you need to stand up and saying point of order. And then the chair says, state your point. And then the chair may identify that your point is well taken. If one is dissatisfied with the ruling, they may appeal to the commission as a whole for a final decision. If the decision of the chair is sustained, the appeal can be discussed, and the presiding officer may enter the debate without giving up the chair. A majority of no votes is necessary to reverse the ruling. A tie sustains it. Whenever necessary, advice may be asked as to correct procedures. And the motion to adjourn is usually not debatable. Once the chair makes the motion to adjourn, the meeting's adjourned. So the vote needed to pass a motion or elect an official is based upon the votes actually cast. And this gives the general consent. And I think we talked about this recently, where it was just kind of everybody was basically in agreement, not needing to take a vote. But I'm concerned that with our kind of hybrid meetings, that may not be appropriate. So while we're operating in hybrid, we should stick with the roll call vote.
Have you discussed that with county council?
Go ahead.
So this probably needs to be edited in the rules too, but since we're no longer operating under AB 361, we am not strictly having teleconference meetings on this platform. We don't have to do the roll call votes anymore. The hybrid is, it's a courtesy for people who want to participate remotely. And we're also thinking about developing some language to put on the agenda as to that, so that if there are technological difficulties, people will know that if they want to be assured to participate, they should be here in person.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to that?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner Mitchell.
One thing that the Coastal Commission does that we could potentially do while we have people who are just listening is for things such as the consent agenda, where we've already pulled anything that there's anything anyone has a problem with.
Right.
So you could ask, is there any objection to unanimous consent for this? Or is there any objection to a voice vote on this? All in favor say aye, all opposed nay. And since you vocally announce the result of any votes that are taken, I think that sufficiently covers anyone who'd be listening. And it's a lot faster.
Sure. Unless other commissioners have concerns with that, I'd be happy to entertain that or do it that way for at least, consent votes and other things. Yes, Ms. Duke.
Through the chair. One thing to note is that if anyone does participate remotely in those circumstances we discussed previously, like the emergency or
Oh,
good
right.
cause, then we would need to go back to the roll call vote for
If
that.
a commissioner is participating remotely.
Correct.
And also, just for clarity for the viewing public, the result is unanimous, or maybe it's not unanimous, but whatever it is, if anyone does object, and whatever the vote, it can still be put on the screen. Would that be correct? Even doing it this way, whether we do it by roll call or just, is it unanimous? Is there any objection? Either way, as long as it can be put clearly on the screen that, what the result of the vote was, then I think there's no loss at all.
I do have the ability to record a unanimous yay vote.
Okay, sure, great, thanks.
And usually a commissioner can say, no, I want a roll call.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Question, please.
Yes.
In a voice roll call vote, how do you determine the order when you're calling the names up for the roll call?
I have been previously asked to switch that up and not do it in a particular order or the same order each time. So I just randomly pick.
I thought you had a magic 8-ball back there or something. I was just trying to figure
I
that
used to
out.
just go in order and
And
I always had to be last.
Right.
Could I just add, that was a request of the commission?
I think it's important, not on certain matters that might be controversial, order of the vote can be important. So I think it's good that you mix it up. I think that needs to be done.
I loathe this part. Could we just do it right to left and the next time left to right, as opposed to helter-skelter, just for purposes of having our microphones on efficiently and not be literally at random?
It's not up to me.
Yeah, I mean, I entertain others' thoughts on this point. Commissioner Mulder?
I personally like the random. The reason I like it is because we don't have many contentious items, but when it was done in a certain order, some people would strategically, maybe tactfully, have their vote go one way or another. I don't know that to be true 100% or not, but that's just been something I had noticed, and I like it this way. Or we could all, if we all had 7 vote buttons, that would be cool, that we could do that too. So.
I'll just speak up to say, I actually agree. I think it's a little bit more functional in avoiding predictability about when, who's going to be the swing vote or whatever. Again, it doesn't happen that often, but I think where there is a split vote, it can be helpful to not know the order in which you're going to be called. That's my opinion.
Well, it doesn't matter because we're going to be voice voting.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Director. Thanks for indulging us.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. Actually, that was a good discussion. I think we learned something about the ability to show a unanimous vote. So the next item is just majority disqualification abstentions. A majority vote is always required, and that's a minimum of 3 votes, which is a majority of a 4-person quorum. So a quorum is 4, and this is another correction we need to make. One is disqualification due to conflict of interest. A commissioner who is disqualified due to a conflict of interest may not be counted towards a quorum. So if we have 4 people here for the meeting, 4 commissioners for the meeting, one has a conflict of interest, that item cannot be acted on that night. And then abstention by choice, commissioners who are present and entitled to vote but who abstain are counted toward a quorum. But commissioners who abstain by choice are deemed to acquiesce to the conclusion reached by the commission. So then there are just some examples here. So really important, a tie vote on a motion results in the motion not passing. And so the objective then is for the commission to reformulate motions to see if a motion can be offered and seconded that would actually receive an affirmative vote. And so that's often very important. So we went through site visits and ex parte contact with commissioners last time, so I'm not going to go through this thoroughly because I think Destiny did a particularly good job of explaining this. And then planning commissioner officers and duties, obviously there's a chair and a vice chair and then the secretary, and then all commissioners must receive 2 hours of training in general ethics principles and ethic laws relevant to your public service. And then all commissioners are required under the State Political Reform Act to file an annual statement of economic interests. I think everybody's done that now. So meetings are held under the Brown Act. They're scheduled on the first and third Thursdays of the month. They begin at 6 and conclude promptly at 9:30. The commission can schedule study sessions and can call special meetings. Talks about a quorum, absence of quorum. In an absence of a quorum, basically all the items are continued. The meeting is just closed. Each application or commission-initiated action filed in proper form with the required data is placed on the agenda. The commission, under the guidance of the chair, will attempt to remain on schedule, but will at times be free in accordance with these rules to accept additional testimony or undertake discussion. That probably has more to do with when there's an effort to put timed items on an agenda. I know I've been part of doing that in other situations, and that's really, really hard to identify how long certain items will take. You could say one item's going to take 15 minutes, it'll take 3 hours, and one item's going to take 2 hours, and it takes 30, so, or 30 minutes. So.
Commissioner Mitchell.
We do have the authority under the Brown Act to set a time limit if we so determine that that's necessary. Is that correct?
Realistically, you can set time limit on the amount of time you give individuals to offer testimony, but you can't set a time limit that precludes the public from participation. And so that's really important. I mean, one of the things that we've seen before on certain projects is you look out in the audience and you see 200 people out there, and the chair asks how many people are going to speak tonight, and everybody raises their hand, and you start to do the math. It's, 100 times 3, that's 300 minutes. So we're not going to get there. And so then that's when you start to decide, okay, I'm not going to give 3 minutes to everybody. So, anything else?
Yeah, Commissioner Mulder.
Just wanted to add the time thing. I agree 100% because that's, you can't gauge it. I've tried so far. I've tried gauging like, hey, I'll be home at this time, and I've given up like after 6 months, and I honestly gave up 100% on guessing when we would end.
Why do we have a hard stop?
I think it really has more to do with the facility and the fact that in order to have this open, there is security here.
Mhm.
Who wants to go home?
Well, I've been around long enough to remember before that was made a rule. And when we were having the hearings about the general plan update revision, we were routinely going past 10 or later. But that was very costly to the overtime for security and so forth. So, yeah.
So obviously, the county and the commission themselves want to behave in an ethical and accountable manner, and that's really what these speak to. Complying with both the letter and the spirit of the laws and policies affecting the operations of governments. One of the things that commission's called to do is be independent, impartial, and fair in the judgment and actions that you take. Public office is to be used for the public good, not for personal gain, and public deliberations and processes need to be conducted openly unless legally confidential in an atmosphere of respect and civility. The commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's obviously very, very important. It's inappropriate to conduct anybody's self in a discriminatory manner or with respect to sexual harassment or harassment in general. And those don't reflect the values of the county. So there's some additional required education and then some additional information that's helpful to understand some of the local
Director
tribal
Ford?
history. Yes.
Can we just call that issue out? I appreciate you underscoring that the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the fact that there is required diversity education or training for all of us as county representatives. Can you remind us how we are to access that training?
Sure, that is available through basically the NeoGov website that you should have been given access to. And if not, okay, I take it you haven't. So I will make a note, take it upon myself to make sure that I get in contact with whoever I need to contact to give you access to take the courses that you're required to take, because it's kind of an empty promise to require training and then not provide the access to it.
So we do have to take a training, but that's in addition to these two trainings?
Yes.
Commissioner Skapdal.
I thought they were sent to me by the HR department, I believe.
Okay.
I honestly don't recall ever getting that.
It came with my, I don't know, I got kind of a big onboarding dump that included
Maybe
this
for the
code of
new ones,
ethics
but I think
and,
for those
yeah.
that have been on there,
Okay.
maybe not have had
Yeah,
Interesting.
okay. That's good to know, though, that you, as a more recent onboarded commissioner, got that. Commissioner Landry?
So I believe I received some of these through the state
Okay.
as an employee for Humboldt. Certainly the sexual harassment, and I did have a question in regards to the ethics training. Whether the things that we would do on a regular basis, on a routine basis, would count towards this as well.
If probably in your affiliation with the university, you've probably taken, if not this course, a similar course, and it may qualify. I don't know. I need to see what it is and then ask that question.
Are these one-time classes or every 2 years or?
They're every couple of years, yeah.
Okay.
So to ask that question, it would be our HR department?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, some things that probably go without saying, that the commission is to act in the public interest, comply with state law, conduct themselves in a professional manner. Obviously, people have the right to speak, and we need to give the opportunity, even when sometimes it's things we disagree with. But everybody has a right to express themselves. We need to respect the process, and decisions need to be based on merit. And if I could just add that merit is based upon the facts related to the policy and ordinance issues. I've often struggled sometimes where, an individual has great merit, but what they're, in fact, I was once involved in a case where they just wanted to subdivide their property, and the person was injured, war veteran, highly decorated, great merit, but he wanted to subdivide a piece of property, and the water source was high in arsenic and high in fluoride and was basically poisonous to drink, and future people would be unsuspecting of that. So the merit in that of the subdivision wasn't good, but his merit was tremendous, and we need to be careful about.
Director, could I stop you for a question from Commissioner West?
Thank you. If we could go back up to Commissioner Conduct. Just had a quick question about that. Talking about conduct, it looks like is it explicitly during meetings, or is it kind of in all aspects of our life that this is something that we are held to?
It's a great question, because you now carry the title of commissioner. And so there will be times when people are recognizing you in public as being a Humboldt County Planning Commissioner. And do you get to have your own private life? Yes, you do. But you need to recognize that the way that you conduct yourself outside of the meeting can have a bearing on how you're representing the county.
Well, also, if you're very opinionated in public about something and then come in here and act like you're going to be fair and impartial, it might come back on you.
Well, that actually, could I say, could come back on more than the commissioner. That could come back on a due process foul where the court could find the county misbehaved. And so that's where we have to be really careful to not convey prejudice towards a project either way.
So if I did have prejudice, I should disqualify myself?
If you could not be unbiased, yes.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Or could I say one other thing?
Yes.
You may think that you could be unbiased, and I'm using you euphemistically, not directly at you, Commissioner O'Neill, but if you've said things that other people have heard that portrays how you're going to vote ahead of time, that's a steep, slippery slope.
So the last presentation that you gave us, this sort of idea came up as well. How do we know if, we want to show up to the Board of Supervisors meeting and make comments on several of the items? At what point, is there a specific line that we can cross, or how do we know what's exercising our free speech rights versus what's something that can prejudice due process?
That's a good question, and I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all line. I think that it's important to use your discretion if there's things that will continue to be in front of the commission that your comments would portray a bias, then that would be definitely a steep and slippery slope. If you're presenting to the board as a member of the public and you're not presenting a bias, then you are free to be a member of the public.
Yes, Ms. Duke.
Just wanted to go back to Commissioner West's comment. Section I that follows what we were looking at on advocacy also speaks to the question that you raised. It says that commissioners shall represent the official policies or positions of the entire planning commission to the best of their ability when designated as delegates for this purpose. And then when presenting their individual opinions and positions, commissioners shall explicitly state that they do not represent the position of the entire commission. So that's might be helpful.
Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Mulder, yeah.
So I just wanted to piggyback on what Commissioner Mitchell was saying there. As someone that I myself speaks at different topics, from my understanding, if I'm wrong, I want to be corrected, is if, for example, if the commission had voted on a project and it was appealed before the Board of Supervisors, as a member of the public, I think you still have a right to comment on that because it's not going to come back to you. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yeah, I think that's correct, and I think as Natalie just read, that just need to identify that you're not representing the commission, that you're representing your own personal thoughts.
I try to do that. Thank you. And then the other thing is, other public processes that may eventually have things come before the commission. My understanding as a member of the public, we are allowed to participate, to listen for facts and ask questions, as long as we are not pre-forming an opinion one way or the other. Is that correct or incorrect?
I'm not sure if I understand the question completely, because I think that the listening to facts and opinions leads to a conclusion. So you are forming opinions along the way. You're not supposed to come in with your mind made up. If that's your question, that's absolutely correct.
No, I'm not trying, I'm saying like in the public process, listening to, trying to listen to facts as far as the way county's presenting them and not make an opinion and just ask questions of why are these numbers excluded from something, or why are these numbers, you know, those kind of questions, trying to find an understanding of why something's included or not included in a process.
I would say that's fair, that it's important to seek to understand first.
Thank you.
I appreciate the question because, I mean, I'm thinking of like, sometimes there's a public hearing or two put on by the county about a project that will or may eventually come before us. So in those situations, it's perfectly fine for us to attend, to listen, to ask questions, so long as we're not prejudging or expressing our opinion, basically.
I think that's fair.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Mitchell.
So an example I can think of is the general plan petition that sort of goes to the board first, then comes to us if it's approved, and then may ultimately go back to the board. If we comment on that, is that fraught with potential due process issues?
I would say yes, because you're conveying that you've made up your mind before the application's even been submitted. Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
No, thanks. This is a good discussion. So then there's a matter of confidential information. Commissioners shall respect confidentiality of information concerning property, personnel, or affairs of the county, and not disclose that. And obviously, you can't use personal resources for private advantage. Natalie just mentioned advocacy, support and maintain a positive and constructive environment.
So I have a question. When do we get confidential information? I mean, everything that we're given is public, isn't it?
The,
Ostensibly, you could get confidential information, like we could have a closed session.
We've never had one
never
since I've been
know
here.
about it. There could be some sort of confidential supplement that you would review with information from a tribe. So there are like really rare situations where you might get that. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I haven't experienced it since, because everything that we get is publicly available, so. I mean, if we approve something and then went and said, hey, we've just approved a subdivision, you might want to go look at buying a parcel or something, that wouldn't necessarily be confidential because it's already been released to the public, right?
If you shared something that was public with someone, that wouldn't be a problem.
That would be fine, okay. Because I think I've done that before, just to make sure.
Moving down to the policy role of the Planning Commission. And the commission is,
Oh, yeah.
so commissioners need to respect the role of the board as the ones responsible for determining policies of the county. Commissioners shall not interfere with the administrative functions of the county or professional and legal duties of county staff, nor shall they impair the ability of staff to implement board policy decisions. And then we get to code and ethics violations. And this question was, I think, asked earlier. Should a commissioner's behavior not comply with the code of conduct, then the chair of the commission shall address such behavior in the moment. Should it be the chair's conduct that is in question, any member of the commissioner can call for a pause to discuss the conduct and make a point of order to correct the behavior, to comply with the rules of order and/or the code of conduct. No action of the Planning Commission shall be reversed solely by failure to follow these rules. And all activities of the Planning Commission are subject to applicable sections of the Humboldt County Code and the state of California. And I think we're at the end there. Any questions, concerns, comments?
One more example. There's talk of a potential ballot initiative that would, it's not being brought forward by the county. Can we, in our individual capacities, work to oppose or support that or make our positions known? Like, sometimes we're asked to endorse candidates, for example. Could we endorse, in theory, a ballot initiative or whatever the opposite of endorse? Endorse the,
That'd be an oppose?
the no.
That's a good question. And not hypothetical either.
So the county is somewhat limited in what it can officially do with respect to the ballot initiative. And one of the things that we can't really do is outright campaign against it. And so if you were to, say, oppose a ballot initiative and have Brian Mitchell, Humboldt County Planning Commissioner, after it, that could jeopardize the county. If you were to say Brian Mitchell, resident of Humboldt County, concerned citizen, I believe you could.
Oh. Commissioner Mulder?
So, to piggyback on that, from my understanding is as long as county resources were not being used to sway one way or another, or titles, we could be okay.
Right, and that's the planning commissioner title is.
Yes.
Good question. Thank you. And My only question, which I think was maybe answered, is I wanted to confirm that this document had been shared with the newer commissioners that joined since October, and it seems that it was part of a packet. You think you got this? Not this. I'm holding up the agenda. The one that Director Ford just reviewed. I just want to make sure that that everybody could access it, new and old, but particularly the newer commissioners.
We'll make sure that we send it out again, but I believe that it was definitely sent out for the April 4th meeting. It was included in that packet.
Yeah, it was. That's right. Right. Thanks for that reminder too. Okay, great. Oh. All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to go through that. And just very quickly, I want to see if there's any other report from the planner for this evening.
I'll just bring up that some actions by the commission were at the board this last Tuesday, and the board actually approved them both. One was a lot line adjustment with the joint timber management plan, and the other was a lot line adjustment with the zone boundary adjustment. We need to take our lot line adjustment with the zone boundary adjustment back because it ended up in the wrong place on the agenda. So it's a little bit embarrassing to have that kind of a mistake, but we'll fix it.
Thanks. Commissioner Landry.
So how about for missing a meeting? If we know that we're going to miss a meeting, the procedure on that?
I think it's helpful to let us know, let staff know, let perhaps the chair know that you're going to miss a meeting. And that way,
Next one.
one of the things Laura often does is sends out an email just to ensure that we're going to have a quorum. And so if we know that people are going to be missing, and if we know that 4 are going to be missing, we can then start to let people know not to come to the meeting.
Great. Thanks. Good question. Commissioner Mitchell.
So the second meeting of the month was added on for the general plan and then kept on because we had such a workload from cannabis projects. Do we envision that to continue in perpetuity? Or what's the long-range forecast on that?
So we still have a consistent flow of cannabis applications that we will probably see at least through the end of the year. We are still trying to consolidate meetings. Tonight was a little bit light. But normally, if we had a meeting, just if there was like 1 or 2 less items, we would not have scheduled this meeting. And so one of the things that Cliff is doing is working hard to project meetings out so we're able to forecast whether or not we really need to have a meeting or not. So right now, we're keeping 2 meetings, but I could envision a time when we're back down to 1.
Yes, Commissioner West.
And I'm not sure if you might even know this, but if it's appropriate for you to share, can you talk about some of the items that might be coming up in the foreseeable future for us to be considering?
Do you want to cover that?
Sure. So we have a couple, we're going to continue to have cannabis projects coming in front of the commission. We do have an interesting one that should be hopefully on the agenda in June for a home for autism, adults with autism in McKinleyville. And so I think that's an interesting one that is going to be in front of you guys pretty soon. We have a couple larger subdivisions that are making their way through the process that hopefully will come in front of you in the next couple of months. That's about all I can really think of off the top of my head right now.
Yes.
So with the recent announcement with the scaling down of the Nordic project, are we able to foresee when that may get back to us?
I don't know that it will come back to the commission. The project EIR evaluated the yellowtail as an alternative. And also, the scaling down is well within the analysis and the approval. So that wouldn't be something that's inconsistent with what the commission approved. We've asked them for information to demonstrate how it's compliant with the CDP and compliant with the assumptions within the EIR. We haven't seen that yet. We expect that in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah, great. Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much, Director. And finally, although I know we've gone a long time without a break, but I do just want to give the Planning Commission a chance to raise any discussion items that you wish to bring up. Seeing none, then I guess we will adjourn for the evening, and we will see you all on May 18th, except for Commissioner Landry. Thanks for the heads up. Thank you.